This is Terry Battisti with the Bass Fishing Archives, and I'm sitting here with Mark Menendez on the beautiful shores of Lake Chickamauga, Tennessee. And we're talking about how Mark got into competitive bass fishing. And it just so happens that he actually started fishing Operation Bass, the Redman Tour, back in its inaugural year, 1983, and Mark's got a great story about that.
Well, you know, growing up in Paducah, Kentucky, I'm right there on Kentucky and Barkley Lakes. So I had mentors. I had a next door neighbor named Clyde Watts, who I still fish with on occasion.
Really?
Clyde is in his upper 80s and still in heck of a great shape. He took the time to take a young person that was truly enthusiastic about fishing, knew every name of every lure, and this was just after the great bass club explosion in the early 70s. I moved in next door to him. His kids were into sports and girls and didn't want to fish, but I was pestering him all the time, so I started fishing with Clyde. Clyde moved, he was a telephone executive, and David Hutchison, an engineer, taught me tournament fishing. Well, Dave liked to go to tournaments and was a big tournament fisherman, and Mike Whitaker had started the Operation Bass thing, and then it had grown into the Redman Tournament Trail. This was the first one they had, was at Kentucky Lake. It was in March, and I entered and ended up catching enough bass to get a few points out of the deal. I fished the entire season by the grace of something that had happened at an old Operation Bass regional. Mike Whitaker had dared Bill Schrader to fish the regional at Eufaula in shorts because it was cold at Lake Eufaula in Alabama, and Bill took him up on that. Mike gave him a year's worth of entries for doing that. That was the bet. Well, Bill, a very successful businessman, says, look, leave those entry fees for some young people that might want to fish. Well, David Hutchison Jr. and I were great friends, and I were fishing the tournament, so we found out about this, so that financed half of the season for us. So it developed a real fire in me. It was a good basis. It was a draw type situation. I practiced the tournaments out of my own boat. I had a 16-foot aluminum bass boat with a 40 horsepower outboard on the back of it, and that didn't slow me down on Kentucky Lake. If I wanted to run 25 miles, Terry, I'd beat my way down through there. But I would fish the tournaments as a non-boater, because we would draw each other, and you would have an 18-footer with a 150, and I didn't have access to that. But that's how I practiced, that's how I fished, and as I grew and got older and got more experience and had more fortunate success, I finally did make that All-American in 1996, and things had grown in proportions from the first All-American held at Kentucky Dam Marina, where multi-divisions fished for the championship, where Dean Starkey won the event, to I'm at Pine Bluff, the history of the Bassmasters, where Clunn makes his little green fish speech. And when I check in the second day of the All-American in the first flight, I'm leading the tournament. There's 15 minutes between flights, and our good friend Stephen Browning had an extra 15 minutes of fishing, and he lands an extra pound and a halfer to win the tournament by less than a pound. But it was the foothold of fishing those draw tournament events with Operation Bass in the early days, where it was really a family affair. Everybody knew everybody, everybody helped everybody. It was just really good, wholesome fun that launched me into the scene today.
So what was it like, you're fishing with these guys that are 20, 30, sometimes maybe 40 years older? Did they take 16, 17, 18-year-old kids seriously?
Not well. It was not well. But after I would get into the boat with them and they'd say, okay, where are we going to try to fish? What part of the lake are we going to try to fish? And I would break it down, the knowledge that I had and the pre-practice that I had put in. I said, look, you know, on the way, and I always paraphrase like this, on the way, since we're going in that direction, if you'd allow me 10 or 15 minutes to get in one area, and let's try this just for a minute, I won't bother you the rest of the day. And that was always my best place. And we'd catch 4 or 5, and it became more of a team event. And,
so they gained some trust in your knowledge
and ability. They gained some trust
in
me and saw that I had done the homework and saw that I could manipulate the bait, had the skill to, and then it became a lot easier. But when they I got some really ugly looks. Little 16-year-old kid, pimples on my face. Hi, sir, I'm your partner tomorrow. I want to go fish my fish. That didn't set well until you sat down and had a good open discussion with them, and then it was fun. And then after that, a few checks here, a few checks there, and started making regionals and putting myself in position to win some things. It was really neat after that.
That's cool. Well, Mark, appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you, Terry.
Yep, anytime.